on his way. Devil is on his way. Devil is on his way, motherfucker. The devil gonna make you pay. Fall to your knees. Devil is on his way. Fall to your knees. Devil gonna make you pay. Fall to your knees. Devil is on his way. Motherfucker, he's on his...
Mountain Murders is an Appalachian true crime podcast. Listener discretion is advised. The show contains graphic language and depictions of violence. It may not be suitable for all audiences.
We say fuck a lot. Hey guys, welcome back to Mountain Murders.
I'm Heather.
And I'm Dylan.
How you doing, Dylan?
I feel pretty good today.
Isn't there like a split in the polar vortex or something? We've had a lot of cold weather.
Something's going on.
And my toes are numb right now. They're so frozen.
Well, our house has shitty insulation on the floors.
I just need to put them under your body.
Yeah, well, you know what? Why wouldn't you add a weather calamity on top of the end of 2020, right? I mean, that just seems like it fits.
When is 2021 going to get here?
Well, I don't think we're there yet. You know,
I don't either.
we had this discussion that there's been a glitch in the Matrix.
Yes.
And it explains everything that happened last year.
It does.
Yep.
It's keeping on 2020.
Well, you know, it's not going to settle down anytime soon.
It's very cold right now.
Yeah, it is cold.
My feet are chilly, and I'm ready to get into the story. Are you ready?
Yeah, well, you got people thinking we're recording in the meat locker.
Well, we are. It's freezing in here.
It's called our bedroom.
Yes. Okay, so it's very cold, and I'm ready to get into the story and warm up with a good true crime case.
Oh, can we talk about Blake Shelton right quick?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, so I saw today, and I think some other people probably seen this, last couple of days. Blake catching some hell for his new song, Minimum Wage.
Like he knows anything about minimum wage. His net worth is $100 million.
Yeah, so you hear that. So if I saw Blake Shelton's Minimum Wage, I'd be like, oh, this must be like the blue collar working person's anthem, or you don't know how it is being on minimum wage.
The struggle is real.
Yeah, and then you turns out that song is nothing like that. He's just basically equating, even if you're broke, I still love my girl. Yeah, I'm not sure what Blake's
Even when you're broke, you're rich in love?
Yeah, fuck you, Blake.
Well, I don't see him dating no poor chick.
Yeah, well, you know what? Love don't pay my light bill, bitch.
Well, I guess when you combine your $100 million with her $100 million, you don't have to worry about those things.
You know what? He struggled long ago before he made it.
What, like 20 years ago?
Yeah, and then I think people kind of get out of touch with real what's going on.
Well, it's really tone deaf right now.
It's very tone deaf.
Everything that's happening in the world.
So many people lost their jobs. So many people struggling to make ends meet.
Well, you read me a quote from Mr. Old Red himself or whatever.
Yeah.
And it was what? These people just don't understand country music?
These people, well, he said it's just 4 or 5 people who have a problem with it online. Even he doesn't even understand what tone deaf means. It's like, I'm not directly attacking your work here, sir, your art, if you will. It's just, come on, just the optics are not good. Maybe you should have waited till next year to release your song called Minimum Wage when so many people are out there struggling right now, you piece of shit.
Well, and to say they don't understand country music, well, I'm sorry, but let's look at your songbook, Blake. I think you're the one that doesn't understand country music, okay?
Okay, enough about him.
Yeah, you, sir, are no fair and young. All right, are we ready to do this?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, now that we have pissed off 4 or 5 people out there.
Well, if you're a Blake Shelton fan, there's no offense to you as far as that goes, but we see this time and again with celebrities, very tone deaf, very disconnected with the Main Street.
Well, I'm sorry, but your Blake Shelton country ain't the same as my Conway Twitty country.
Well, that's true.
So, yeah, we'll split hairs if you want.
Ooh, it's finer than a frog's hair.
Are you ready here?
Let's go.
Let's do it. It was 10 a.m. a warm Saturday morning on September 16th of 1922 when a 15-year-old factory worker named Pearl Balmer and her 23-year-old beau Raymond Schneider were walking along DeRussy Avenue, known as a lover's lane in New Brunswick, New Jersey. DeRussy was a dirt road that turned down by an abandoned farm known as the Phillips family farm. Off to the left, there was an isolated driveway perfect for whatever romantic plans the pair, who, by the way, were hiding their relationship from Pearl's father, whatever plans they had. They stepped down a slight embankment when Pearl saw something about 500 feet away lying between a path and a crabapple tree. At first, the young girl giggled, thinking they stumbled upon another couple engaging in a tryst, or perhaps they were just napping together. But soon she realized the people weren't moving or breathing. Realizing they had stumbled upon a dead man and woman, the young couple raced to the home of an elderly man named Edward Stryker. His niece, Grace Edwards, placed a phone call to police.
Wow. That'd be crazy, right?
Yeah.
Coming upon not only one dead person, but 2 dead people?
Yeah.
Multiple bodies? That's scary.
Under the crabapple tree?
Under the crabapple tree, and you was all worked up, about to get your little rubbings on with your lover?
Your rubbins.
Yeah.
Is that what they were going to do?
Yeah, there was going to be some rubbings.
You think so?
Maybe.
What were they going to be rubbing?
Dry humping through the clothes.
Oh, okay.
I know, it sounds painful.
Okay. Thank you for that, Dylan. When officers arrived on the scene, they found what appeared to be bodies posed. The pair lay on their backs with the man's right hand under the woman's shoulder and neck. His face was partially covered by a Panama hat. A brown scarf seemed to be placed on her face like a veil. The man had a gunshot wound on the head. The woman had been shot, but her throat was cut from ear to ear as well.
Wow, that's overkill.
An autopsy would reveal that she'd been shot 3 times. The woman's head was posed on his right arm. A card was propped up against the man's leg, and torn bits of paper were scattered around the bodies. Investigators found a man's wallet on the ground. Inside, there were several business cards and membership cards, as well as a driver's license registered to Edward Wheeler Hall of 23 Nichols Avenue, New Brunswick. The business card placed by his foot read, Reverend Edward W. Hall, pastor of Episcopal Church of St. John. The torn bits of paper were cheap stationery and would soon prove to be love letters written by the dead woman, who would be identified as Eleanor Mills. The language and penmanship was that of a swooning high school girl with declarations such as, "There isn't a man alive who could make me smile as you do."
Oh, wow. Those are like the letters you write about me.
And, "I have the greatest of all blessings, a noble man, deep, true, eternal love."
Wow.
A 2-foot iron pipe was discarded near the bodies also.
So this is a pretty interesting scene here. You got these 2 lovers, 2 people killed, kind of posed together, embracing each other. The ripped up love letters. I mean, it shouldn't be hard to solve, right?
And he's a reverend?
And he's a reverend?
Interesting, huh? Officers wanting to confirm this man was actually the rector at St. John's waved over a passerby car, which was driven by the town veterinarian. The doctor was asked if he knew Edward Hall, and the man said yes, and then he was asked to identify the dead man. The veterinarian nodded in agreement, yes, this is very much Edward Hall.
Oh, so they've confirmed his identity.
It was determined the pair had been dead about 36 hours. The woman was shot between the eyes. Her slashed throat was filled with maggots.
Oh.
She had a wound on her upper lip and bruising on her arms. The man had been shot with a .32 caliber. Soon gossip spread throughout Middlesex and Somerset counties. The 1920s were marked with significant cultural and social conflict. Jazz journalism, as it is often called, brought with it sensational stories that were equivalent to tabloid newspapers today. Murder, divorce stories, audience loved these kinds of stories. They were deviances that forced people to confront their values.
So this story is going to explode. It's going to go wild.
The social fabric of the U.S. was changing as traditional values were challenged by the budding cosmopolitan culture. Sexual mores and gender roles were shifting. Prohibition made alcohol illegal. The first world was breaking from the Victorian stuffiness, enjoying the spoils of financial booms. This story was absolutely perfect for the time. It had everything that people wanted: sex, murder, and taboos. Not only was the minister found dead, but it was revealed the female victim was a singer in the church choir.
Oh my gosh. Well, this story would go crazy nowadays, right? I mean, it's got all the elements.
Edward Hall and Eleanor Mills were married to other people. However, many in the congregation knew of their torrid affair. Eleanor especially did very little to keep their love discreet. For several years, rumors circulated that the Reverend Hall was passionately involved with the dark-haired soprano. The look on your face, Dylan.
Well, I mean, this is salacious. I mean, really.
Is it?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
You want to hit a high note?
No, I can't do that. I'm on the lower end.
Hall was born in 1881 in Brooklyn, New York. He graduated from Brooklyn Polytechnic Institute in 1898 with a liberal arts degree. He studied at the General Theological Seminary in Manhattan. Hall was ordained at the Grace Church in New York City, then served as the curate of the East Side Chapel. His tasks were assisting the parish pastor as well as caring for parish souls. Hall was a natural fit in this position as he was described as personable and quite likable. In 1907, the young man took a position as assistant pastor in Basking Ridge, which led to his position as rector at St. John's in New Brunswick. Soon after taking up the rector position, many females within the church were smitten with this friendly, young, single bachelor. On July 20th of 1911, Edward Hall wed a woman 7 years his senior, named Frances Noel Stevens. Frances was the only daughter of a prominent family, considered a wealthy socialite. 37-year-old Frances met Edward a few years earlier when she became a Sunday school teacher at St. John's. Frances Hall was born in 1874 in Aiken, South Carolina. She was related through her mother to the Johnson & Johnson founders.
Oh, wow, the big money.
Upon her mother's death, she would later inherit about $2 million, which is the equivalent of like $30 million today.
Man, nobody's going to leave me even $2 million. So there's that.
Somebody might leave you $2.
Somebody's probably going to leave me a debt that gets attached to me.
That's probably true. Same for me, babe. That's fine.
That's not true. You're my last chance.
Hey, we're poor, but we're in love.
You're my last chance for minimum. This is what Blake Shelton meant.
Minimum wage, baby, but we're in love.
I might only be making $3 an hour, but I got you.
In that imaginary ivory tower. See, that kind of rhymes, right?
Yeah, and somehow we'll keep on the power.
Yeah.
Yeah, just tell them to put an IOU to love.
Honey, you can sell your feet pics on OnlyFans.
I told you could do that. But remember, we figured out that the price of everything was driven down real far.
Yeah.
Because of the sheer amount of people.
Like I should only sell my foot pic for $2 to some pervert because everybody else is like flooding the market with foot pics.
Because there's 100 other girls who will sell a foot pic for $2.
Yeah. Once married, the Halls moved into one of the finest homes in New Brunswick, a 2-story brick mansion staffed with servants. Frances's eccentric older brother, Willie Stevens, lived with the couple. Willie was called an excitable man who was mentally and emotionally unstable. The Stevens, along with physicians, determined he was unable to live on his own, though he was considered highly intelligent. It was likely that he would be on the autism spectrum today. That's what a lot of people speculate.
Yeah, and that wasn't recognized at all back then, right?
No. Some described his behavior as impulsive, childlike. He adored his baby sister and was noticeably indifferent to her new husband, the pastor. It has been said that Edward Hall assumed the financial management of Willie once he married Frances. Willie was reportedly unhappy with the allotted allowance that he was given by his brother-in-law. The home on Nichols Avenue had been in the Stevens family for many years. So here you go. You get married, you move in, and you got your wife's kooky brother in the room next to you.
Yeah.
Who doesn't particularly like you.
Yeah, but you've kind of taken over everything.
It's got to be kind of awkward, right?
Yeah.
The marriage between Frances and Edward was very proper in appearance. Some might call it boring. Everything the couple did was according to a schedule. They ate breakfast together every morning at the same time, followed by Edward spending hours in his study, working through the morning and into the early afternoon. After lunch, Edward attended appointments and made house calls. Every evening, dinner was served at 6:15 p.m. After supper, Edward attended various meetings, choir practices, and tended to other church activities, usually returning home by 10 p.m., where he then settled into bed.
So they can get up and do it all again.
Yes.
Now, I'm sure for some people like very structured, things, everything on a schedule. It just works for them. But I can imagine after not a lot of time, that would get old. Everything's would seem the same. Don't you think? If you had that strict of a schedule every single day?
Well, it just doesn't seem like this was a marriage that was filled with romance. There was no spontaneity. I mean, it almost seemed like, in some ways, a marriage of convenience from the outside. Because he managed to marry into this wealthy family. Frances was described as a woman who very much valued appearances, keeping up appearances. And so being married to the rector at the church was like a way for her to seem like, oh, she's this wonderful woman in the community.
Oh, okay.
It kind of gave her this sense of, I'm a good person because I'm married to the minister in town.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, it seems like it doesn't seem like a very loving marriage, if you will.
No, not at all. It sounds kind of boring, bro.
Well, I could imagine you be like, yeah, well, I could see me being like, I expect my dinner every evening at 6:15
Well,
p.m.
you know
on
what?
the
If
dot.
we had servants in our mansion who were making you dinner at 6:15, it would be on the fucking table for you, honey.
Okay.
Yeah. Eleanor Reinhardt was 15 years old when she married in 1905. Her pick was James F. Mills, a former shoemaker who was described by some as a simpleton.
Now, I don't think people have ever described me as that. Do you think?
I describe you that way in my mind all the time. But
Do
I
you
just
really?
say
You
it.
don't say it out loud?
No.
And I don't notice
No.
because I'm simple?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Eleanor had been a member of the church choir since she was 14 years old. She had 2 children, Charlotte and Daniel, and by the time her children were seeking more independence, Eleanor became heavily involved in church activities, joining the Ladies' Auxiliary. And by 1920, her husband had quit his job at a rubber factory to become sexton at the church, as well as janitor at an elementary school. Jimmy Mills was no catch. Though he was mild-mannered and meek, he had no ambition in life, and the Mills family barely scraped by with only the basic essentials in life. Many say Eleanor was a devoted mother to her children, but she was also a bored, lonely housewife with little in the way of companionship from her dullard husband, and the woman turned to romance novels and church as an escape from her poor, unfulfilling lifestyle. Why are you looking at me like that? I don't read romance novels.
No, I don't think that you do. I'm just listening to your story.
Around 1919, Eleanor invested most of her time in church. She was there every day helping with anything she could. And the more time Eleanor spent at church, the closer her relationship with the pastor would become. And it was no surprise that Edward might be attracted to Eleanor, as he had dated her younger sister previously before marrying Frances.
Well, yeah, that makes sense.
As a matter of fact, Edward had spent so much time pursuing the young Reinhardt girl that members of the congregation complained. He would be spending more time praying with the sick. He should be spending more time praying with the sick than entertaining a young woman.
Yeah,
What
so
people
it's
said in the early days of his rectorship.
Gosh, I'm just trying not to make any rectory jokes. But yeah, so he's actually, members are feeling that he's negating his duties as rector, and they're noticing. So he's doing it a whole lot for everybody to notice.
Yeah, so he was hardcore pursuing Eleanor's younger sister. And then I guess that didn't work out. He marries Frances, but people weren't really surprised when he had eyes for Eleanor. I don't know if maybe she resembled the sister, or maybe he just had a type. Maybe he liked those brunettes.
Or maybe he liked young girls.
Yeah, even though Eleanor wasn't super young.
Oh, okay.
I mean, by this time she's a woman
Well, maybe.
with kids and a husband.
Well, it sounds like he was really into the other sister. I mean, to pursue someone that hard and that obvious, you're definitely attracted to them. So maybe they do have similar appearance.
The Mills lived in a 4-bedroom apartment on the top floor of a ramshackle house. Edward Hall was known to visit their apartment frequently. Jimmy Mills would later tell reporters that Dr. Hall was my best friend. He had, after all, hired Jimmy as sexton of the church, giving him extra money to maintain the grounds and the buildings. You know, a sexton is like a maintenance worker, basically.
I did not know that.
Well, now you do. In December of 1921, Eleanor fell ill. She was informed that she suffered from kidney malfunction and needed to have one of them removed. A $200 bill was too much for Jimmy to pay, so Dr. Hall took over payments on Eleanor's medical bill.
So even back then, they had problems with health care.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Right? But $200 for a kidney removal is a lot more affordable than it would be today.
Well, you got to look
guess.
at the money. That's actually a significant amount if you look at the,
Okay, Dylan. Gossip didn't seem to make it to Mrs. Hall, though. She didn't seem to have any bad blood against Mrs. Mills, as she had driven her to the hospital when she had to have surgery and visited her at home almost every day after the kidney surgery.
Well, that's interesting.
So it seems that Mr. Mills, Mrs. Hall are clueless about this affair. I mean, that's what it seems.
Well, yeah, unless
but appearances can be deceiving.
Well, yeah, I mean, unless they it's very doubtful that they know about it and are just cool with everything, right? Because, I mean, just from appearance sake, that would look not good to the community for your husband to be going around with another woman, especially him being the pastor and all.
3 weeks before the kidney removal, Dr. Hall had sent Eleanor a single red rose.
Well, what does one red rose mean?
I don't know. What do you think it means?
I think it means like sex.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Is that why you've never given me a single red rose?
Wow. Come on. You don't want flowers.
Dude, we've been together almost 3 years, and you've never once brought me flowers.
You don't strike me as the bring me flowers type of chick, man. I'm serious. This is real right now.
Did you just call me man? Well, listen here, bruh.
This is real. Shit just got real.
Well, what kind of chick am I then?
Well, I feel like you would prefer to have a baby groundhog with a rose inserted through its body inside of formaldehyde. Doesn't that sound pretty cool?
No.
No?
No, I'll just take the baby groundhog, but I don't want like a rose inserted through its body.
That's how I would give you the flowers. You don't even want flowers.
You are hopelessly unromantic, Dylan.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, maybe I do want some fucking flowers.
Oh,
maybe
yeah.
it's the principle. I want some fucking flowers, Dylan.
Well,
I think you folks should email Dylan, mountainmurderspodcast@gmail.com, and tell him he should buy his wife flowers once in a while.
Pause this shit and I'll buy you some damn flowers right now.
You better. Dr. Hall was buried in his ecclesiastical vestments, a stole, a cassock, and a white surplice.
So I'm going to put that in regular people terms. He was buried in a certain type of outfit, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
In his preacher clothes.
Jeez.
His funeral was on September 18th, and his body was transported to Greenwood Cemetery in Brooklyn, New York for burial. Eleanor Mills' funeral was a much simpler affair, attended by only a few people. Her 16-year-old daughter, Charlotte, oversaw the arrangements at a small chapel. Mrs. Hall sent a wreath, which was placed on the casket.
Okay.
The murder investigation was off to a rocky start. Officers had very little to go on, so they started with Jimmy Mills. After all, it's usually the husband, right?
Well, I mean, you got to look at it. You got on one side, you got a wife, and on one side, you got a husband. So, I mean, you're going to think if someone's done, violent murder to people, then you're going to look at the man first. I think that's the way it should be.
Jimmy Mills was very cooperative with detectives. Right off the bat, he told investigators he did not believe the rumors. His wife was not having an affair with Dr. Hall. He just didn't believe it. He told officers he felt robbery had been the motive. Officers saw in James what most people saw, a loser, a harmless dummy who was clearly a cuckold.
Wow.
That's how he was described.
Ooh.
It was hard to envision him mustering up the gumption to commit a double murder. Like, it just was not in his nature. Did not seem to be. Jimmy laid out the events of the previous days for officers, stating that he had went to church on September 14th around 5:45 p.m. to sweep up wood shavings that had been left by carpenters who were repaneling a vestibule. Around 6:15, he arrived home where his wife informed him he was late for supper. The Mills family had dinner together, and after dinner, Eleanor told him she was going to the corner candy store to make a telephone call to Dr. Hall. Charlotte was with her mother, but left before she had finished the phone call and joined her brother, Danny. The kids went to visit their aunt, and they didn't return home until around 10 p.m. Around 7:30 p.m., Eleanor returned to the apartment where she fetched a shawl, a scarf, and her hat, then left again. When Jimmy asked her where she was going, she answered, "Follow me and find out."
Oh, that's cryptic.
Yeah, Jimmy Mills then started a building project. He was constructing window boxes outside the apartment until around 9:45 p.m. when his neighbor finally complained about the hammering noise at the late hour. When the kids arrived home after 10, he noted the time. Eleanor was almost always back by 10 p.m. He decided to go look for her at the church sometime maybe around 10:30, 10:45. He returned home by 11:15 after he claims he found a dark, locked church and realized his wife was not there. He went to bed, leaving the kitchen light on for his wife. He woke up around 2 a.m. seeing the light was still on. He went up to Charlotte's attic bedroom that she shared with her mother. She'd been sharing this room with her mother for a couple of years.
That's kind of weird.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like, I don't want to fuck you anymore. I'm sleeping with our daughter instead.
Yeah, that's exactly what it's
because
like.
I'm having an affair with another man.
Because I've been having an affair with another man.
All right. Well, at least we know that's a good clue. A good way to tip you off, right?
Well, yeah. Anytime people don't sleep in the same room or bed together, there's issues of some type.
Yeah, like maybe he snores really loudly.
Well, that could be one of the minor issues.
He saw Eleanor was still not home yet, and he tried to wake up his daughter. But she was, she was like dead asleep. And she incoherently answered him, kind of mumbling like, Mom's not home, or I don't know, whatever. And went back to sleep immediately. Now, at this time, he allegedly got up, went back to church. It was still dark, locked, just double checking, making sure she's not there. Then he returns home and concerned, is feeling concerned because there's no sign of his wife yet.
Well, yeah, even I think I would have been concerned a little earlier on, but maybe, it seems to me like this isn't the first time she grabbed her jacket, later in the evening and headed out. Like maybe this has been happening. This is speculating, of course, but, I'll be like, what are you doing? Where are you going? I mean, just, in general, not be mean about it. But yeah, so at this point, I'm sure he's finally starting to be like, well, something's not right.
He got up Friday morning around 5:45. He made a purchase of some buns from the store around the corner. I don't know what that means. Buns. But he made the buns for breakfast and served it to the kids.
Maybe he's putting gravy or something on the buns.
Some breakfast buns.
Maybe he's making shit on a shingle.
Maybe. He then went to work. Around 8:30 a.m., he went to St. John's, where he encountered Mrs. Hall. The woman seemed distressed, saying that her husband had not come home at all the night before. Jimmy Mills told her that Eleanor Mills didn't come home either. And then he made the joke, "Do you think they eloped?" And she answered, "I think they're dead and can't come home."
Wow.
When Jimmy Mills was at home for lunch, Mrs. Hall showed up around noon, once again asking if he'd heard anything about his wife or her husband. Around 5 p.m., Mrs. Hall stopped by and asked a third time if he knew anything about his wife. And again, she told him they must be dead or they would have come home.
Well, I mean, that's kind of a weird statement, don't you think?
That afternoon, when Jimmy was reading a copy of New York World newspaper, there was a missing page, and later Charlotte Mills would tell investigators that she saw her mother clipping an article about a prominent Episcopal minister who was named Percy Stickney Grant, and this article featured his views on divorce. When Jimmy is cleaning up Dr. Hall's office later, he will find that clipped article on Dr. Hall's desk.
Oh, like she clipped it out and gave it to him, like, read this.
Yes.
We might can use this.
Saturday, Jimmy was at lunch with his wife's sister, Augusta Tennyson. It was after lunch that a newspaper reporter phoned Augusta and informed her that a body had been found, and it was believed to be her sister, Eleanor Mills. She was found with Dr. Hall. Now, Augusta sends for Jimmy. When he comes back, she tells him the news. On Thursday, a few witnesses had seen Eleanor Mills. A trolley driver said the woman boarded and got off at the end of the line near DeRussy Avenue. She was the lone rider on this trolley. Another woman passed her walking, saying that Eleanor was wearing a dark-colored polka dot dress and she was carrying a small yellow package in the crook of her arm. The same female witness saw Dr. Hall walking briskly toward DeRussy Lane not long after she had passed Eleanor. So saw both these people walking near where their bodies were found.
Near the end of the line.
Near the end of the line. On the day he went missing, Dr. Hall's 10-year-old niece was in town visiting, and he had spent most of the day with the young girl and his wife. After dinner, the family was on the veranda playing a card game when the phone rang. Mrs. Hall claims her husband was in the house at that time when the phone rang, and she assumed he answered it. So around 7 p.m., he comes outside and informs her that it was Mrs. Mills calling regarding an issue with her hospital bill, that she had some questions and he needed to figure out what was going on. He was going to go out, but he'd be back soon.
Oh, yes, a rendezvous of love.
We've got to pay this bill.
Yeah.
I'm going to need your money.
Yeah, I got to go make some change.
Oh, yeah.
Ooh.
When Mrs. Hall...
All I have on me is large bills. Oh, yeah. Oh, sorry.
Well, maybe you need to put some more change in your coin purse. When Mrs. Hall went to bed that night, her husband had still not returned. Around midnight, Mrs. Hall woke up her brother Willie, explaining that her husband hadn't come home. They got dressed and went to the church to check on him, thinking perhaps he had fallen asleep in his office. So Frances and Willie returned back to the house. Mrs. Hall still couldn't sleep, and in the early morning hours, she phoned the police and inquired if there had been any reported casualties.
Oh, that's kind of a weird way to ask.
After breakfast on Friday morning, she went to the church, and that's where she learned from Jimmy Mills that Eleanor was also missing. Now, a witness will come forward later stating that around 2 a.m. on Friday morning, a woman was seen entering the Hall residence, and it would match the description of Frances.
So middle of the morning, someone's seen a woman going into her house.
Like 2 a.m., yeah.
Okay.
The maid told police that Willie had told her something awful had happened, but he better let Mrs. Hall tell her about it. This was on Friday morning. He explained he and his sister hadn't slept all through the night.
So that's her servants.
Yep.
Okay.
So her maid,
Yeah.
the eccentric brother, immediately sees the maid and is like, oh, we haven't slept all night and something terrible has happened, but I'll have to let my sister tell you what it is.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So as soon as the bodies were discovered, newspaper reports told of their love affair. Being a little stupid, Jimmy told a reporter that his wife had often taken afternoon car rides with Dr. Hall, but he assumed Mrs. Hall had also been with them. He had no reason to believe his wife was anything but faithful. Frances Hall's statement was that her husband was absolutely trustworthy and his number one goal was to help people, as he had done with Mrs. Mills by paying her hospital bill.
Yeah, I think so. They're both claiming to be completely unaware of the affair and that this is news to them, and they don't believe it, basically.
Now, I read several books about this case, and it seems that many people believe that Jimmy Mills was probably completely in the dark.
Yeah, I'm going to guess that's probably true.
Because he just seemed very naive and like, my wife wouldn't do that. This was a good guy, you know? But that Frances Hall was more the type that even if she did know, she would deny it because she wouldn't want it to reflect poorly on her family.
Oh, okay.
Her reputation.
That makes sense, I guess.
Right. Now, when police were looking at suspects, Raymond Schneider and Pearl Balmer were considered the possible killers. The pair ran with a criminal crowd of hooligans, and Pearl had been in trouble with the law for being a reckless youth. She had run away from home, was seeing the much older man against her father's wishes, and she had even threatened to kill her stepmother. However, Pearl and Raymond had a solid alibi and lack of motive. Now, later, Pearl's father was accused of incest by his daughter.
Really?
Yeah. So, they were suspects for like 5 minutes.
So these are two that discovered the body, right?
The 15-year-old, her 23-year-old boyfriend.
She was a known reckless youth.
Yeah.
What's she doing out with a 23-year-old boyfriend, guys? I know it was different times and all, but what the hell?
Well, running away from home.
Yeah.
Threatening her stepmother.
So they quickly take a look at them for a second. Are like, well, she's not the perfect or, perfect youth, or doesn't always do what she says and is told. But
also her dad's being accused of incest. Maybe her home life's not that great.
Right.
They immediately are like, she's not our suspect. Well, the police continued questioning Jimmy Mills and Frances Hall, but they had no solid leads and no real suspects. The local police had also done a poor job of controlling the crime scene. Hours after the bodies were discovered, hundreds of curiosity seekers showed up to the death location, contaminating this crime scene. They were taking items from memorabilia and even chopped down that crabapple tree so people could take pieces of wood home for a murder souvenir.
Yeah, so people were big on that back then. If they showed up around a house or something somewhere where someone was murdered, they're literally like taking the bench off the front porch and taking stuff as a souvenir.
Years ago when we covered the Lawson family murder, remember there was a raisin Christmas cake that had been made by the dead daughter, and people were taking raisins off the cake.
Yeah, and isn't that cake been preserved?
I think so.
And it's in a museum, but it's missing some raisins.
Yeah.
What? People are weird.
We've always been morbid, right?
Yeah. For as long as I think there's been humans around, I think there's been this morbid curiosity.
Humans are fucked up, and I love it. Thank you, guys.
But don't kill.
4 residents who live near DeRussy Lane reported hearing a woman's screams around midnight. Now, soon, police began looking at Willie Stevens as their prime suspect. He owned a .32 revolver, which he told officers he hadn't fired, in years. People told the cops that Willie hated Dr. Hall, and he hated how the man controlled his money. The relationship was not even lukewarm.
So he has no problem saying I basically haven't liked him the entire time.
Yeah, and a lot of other people were witnesses he didn't care for him. It wasn't until September 21st that Mrs. Hall made her first public statement to the media, and she did it through a friend. She explained the motive had to be robbery, as Dr. Hall wore a gold watch, which was missing from his person, and he had $50 in his wallet to cover the hospital payment on Mrs. Mills' behalf. And they didn't find the money. They didn't find the gold watch. Charlotte Mills, feeling left out of the media spotlight, retorted in an interview that jealousy had most definitely been the motive for her mother's murder, not robbery. She spoke poorly of Mrs. Hall, stating the woman always remained on the porch during visits, refusing to enter their apartment. Mrs. Hall just thought she was better than everybody.
She was hoity-toity.
Yes. Charlotte said Mrs. Hall didn't like her personally because she was a flapper.
Oh, gosh.
And her mother had attended a tea at Mrs. Hall's house a few weeks before the murder. Eleanor was sick afterwards and told her daughter, if Mrs. Hall wasn't such a good friend, I'd think she tried to poison me.
Oh, so she's not presenting a very good view of Mrs. Hall, Charlotte. So, remind me again what a flapper is. Is that a certain way you dress and act?
Well, yeah, they were like the feel-good girls of the 20s. They wore their little dresses hiked a bit shorter. They liked to dance. They wore their little bobbed hair.
I see.
Like Zelda Fitzgerald was like the epitome of a flapper, Okay. They were just like those free-spirited girls.
Okay.
Pushing back against the constraints of
their bras.
Conservative society.
That's right.
the restraints of their corsets and girdles and bras.
Let them breathe. I don't need no man's creation holding back my titties.
And that's how I feel. I'm like, free the Waynesville too.
The Waynesville too?
Yeah. Investigators learned the affair had caused rifts in church. Congregants were angry, upset, and hurt over the indiscretions. During choir practice, one singer had scratched Mrs. Mills over a songbook.
Oh. So obviously this wasn't really over the songbook. It was over her feelings toward Mrs. Mills. So I get they're finding out that this was known about, had been going on for an extended period of time.
Several years.
And some people felt really strongly about it. So if anything, this just makes their suspect pool bigger and bigger. I mean, really.
So this is what gets me. I was thinking about this, and it's not limited to just like church. It could be in a workplace, whatever.
Yeah, it's very similar.
When people are angry, they find out that maybe this one person is sleeping with the boss or having an affair. Instead of just being an adult about it and being like, one, it's not my business. But two, if I'm going to have feelings about it, instead of just confronting that person.
Yeah.
Like, hey, it's not cool what you're doing in the workplace or, with the minister or whatever. They do this catty shit. Yeah, I'm going to scratch you because I'm mad at you.
Instead of just being like, what you're doing is wrong and I think it's wrong and this is why I don't care. I don't like you right now.
Yeah. Or you know what? This isn't the way I feel my minister should act. I'm going to leave and find a different church.
Right.
Right? This is immoral, whatever, but I'm going to scratch you.
Or we can fight over hymn number 27 at choir practice and scratch each other.
Yeah.
You pick what happens because it's going down.
Isn't that silly?
Yeah.
And I was thinking, well, I mean, it was the 20s, so I don't know, maybe, that was more acceptable than confronting someone. I don't know, but there's still people today that act this way, so I don't know.
Well,
I just think it's kind of silly.
It was the 20s, but I mean, people had more conservative views, really, about a lot of things, relationships, marriage, and things of that nature, their religion. So I'm surprised that someone didn't just come straight out like, I'm going to tell on everybody and like tell everybody involved what they knew what was happening. We don't know that didn't happen, I guess.
Right.
But that's what I would expect.
Well, I guess my line of thinking is if you don't have the balls to confront someone like face to face on something that you feel is like, morally, questionable or that you object to, then maybe it's not your fucking business.
Well,
right?
It's true. Well, I'm more of a face to face kind of guy. Like if I think or I really want to know, I will come ask you. But I'm not going to do the passive-aggressive, behind-the-scenes.
I'm going to scratch you.
Yeah, and carrying on and on about the song discussion, even though everybody knows it's not about the song or whatever. And I'm not going to do that passive-aggressive, behind-your-back bullshit.
Yeah, I'm not either. And I guess I feel like if you're not adult enough or mature enough to confront somebody, then maybe you need to accept that, okay, well, maybe it's not even my business and I need to just keep to myself.
Well, and I'm not going to put that much energy in your shit. Like thinking about it and carrying it around on my shoulders. So I'm quickly going to be like, I don't really care.
A neighbor, an older woman who worked as a seamstress, told reporters that Dr. Hall visited Mrs. Mills' apartment 3 to 4 times a week in the afternoons, always pulling his vehicle around the side street as not to be seen by anyone passing the house.
Well, so they're getting it on frequently. Or maybe they're just having discussions about her medical bills.
I reckon so. After 12 days of investigation, the case was cold. Rumors circulated that perhaps the KKK had killed the couple. Charlotte Mills wrote the governor demanding resolution in her mother's murder, who in turn put pressure on law enforcement. So by September 28th, the Middlesex County Board of Freeholders voted forth a $1,000 reward for arrests in the murder. An order to exhume Mrs. Mills' body came down, and on September 29th, a second autopsy was performed, determining that the woman had been shot 3 times in the head with a bullet penetrating the brain. The woman's head had all been but severed by some sort of sharp instrument. The windpipe was severed. Muscles were cut down to the spinal column. It was a wound so deep that you could see her backbone through the front of her throat.
Yeah, it was definite rage. It seemed to be, he was killed as well, but the rage and stuff seemed to be directed at her, Mrs. Mills, because, I mean, that's overkill. Anytime you shoot someone multiple times in the head and slit their throat, I mean, it's not only do you want to make them sure they die, but you want to, seems like, almost disrespect them after the fact.
The pathologist determined it must be some kind of sharp knife to do that sort of damage. Now, by now, detectives had learned that Mrs. Hall had sent clothing to Philadelphia to be cleaned and dyed. And she did this, I believe, on September the 20th, so just right after the murder. The cleaners informed them that there had been no stains on the clothing, but they had dyed some clothing black. And investigators thought this was incredibly suspicious.
Well, yeah, why wouldn't you just get rid of that stuff? I mean, come on, people.
A second search of the Phillips farm on DeRussy Lane was conducted, including the search of 2 wells. They were hoping they could find the murder weapons, but they never turned up. That's when investigators turned their interest to the Stevens family. So Willie Stevens was also questioned a couple of times, like with his sister's knowledge or with his sister present. So law enforcement felt it was very important to, like, get him away from his sister, right?
Well, yeah.
So they basically go get him, take him, like, when his sister's doing something else so that they can question him. And they also question her older brother, Henry Stevens, and he was a person of interest because he was a known marksman. Like, people around knew he was, like, this excellent shot.
So he's good with a gun.
He lived 55 miles away, and he had a pretty solid alibi. So there was that. By October 24th, a pig farmer named Jane Gibson, and she's going to become known as the pig woman or the pig lady. She came forward telling investigators that she'd actually witnessed the murders. She heard dogs barking, pretty late in the evening, early morning hours, and assumed someone was stealing her corn. So she got on her mule, Jenny, and headed down to the area where she saw these 4 people gathering under this crabapple tree. She heard a gunshot, she saw 2 people drop to the ground, and heard a woman scream, "Henry."
Oh, wow.
Let's pause for a moment, Dylan, and take a quick break. Thanks to those sponsors for making the show possible.
So the pig lady, huh? It sounds like, if her account's true, she may very well witness the murder.
With Jane Gibson's story and later identification of Mrs. Hall and her brother, although her story did change several times, a prosecutor took the evidence before a grand jury on November 20th of 1922. 67 witnesses were called to testify, but the jury didn't indict based on this evidence.
Really?
No.
So 67 witnesses testified in front of the grand jury.
Yep.
So they did not return a bill of indictment.
No.
Oh.
It wasn't until 4 years later that a break came in the case. So 4 years, no answers. And by this time, of course, the story out of the headlines, other crimes had happened.
Yeah, just local
People
gossip.
had moved on.
People still gossip, I'm sure, but it's kind of went away.
On July 3rd of 1926, a piano tuner named Arthur Riel filed for divorce from his wife of 10 months, a woman formerly known as Louise Geist. Geist had been a housemaid for the Halls at the time of Edward's murder. He claimed in the divorce papers that his wife had taken $5,000 payment from her employer for silence in the murders of Dr. Hall and Mrs. Mills.
Wow.
Geist had defended Frances Hall during the grand jury indictment in 1922.
Interesting.
Now, the story was that Edward had planned to elope with Eleanor. He confided in Louise Geist his plans, but instead of her keeping her mouth shut, she told Mrs. Hall. The chauffeur, Peter Tumulty, was ordered to drive Frances and Willie to the pair at their meeting spot on DeRussy Lane near the crabapple tree. Geist and Tumulty both denied these allegations. Mrs. Hall was taken to trial for the murder of her husband, with Mrs. Gibson, the pig woman, as a star witness. Her brother Willie and her cousin, a man named Henry Carpenter, were also indicted in the murders. Before trial, another autopsy was ordered, and this would be the third autopsy.
Yeah, really, I'm wondering given the technology available at the day, how much is really being gained by these multiple autopsies after death?
So these bodies are exhumed 4 years later.
Yeah, I mean,
Third
that's
autopsy.
a long time.
It was revealed during this third autopsy that someone had removed Eleanor's tongue and larynx during the murders.
Okay, first question I would have there is, how did the first two pathologists not notice that?
Well, that is exactly what I noted, is how was this missed the first and second times,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I mean, that's they ain't got no tongue. I mean, it's not like it's some little piece deep inside the body. I mean, surely you look in the mouth as a matter of a procedure when you're doing this, right?
But wow, this definitely seems like a direct fuck you to Eleanor, because she was known for having this beautiful singing voice. She was in the church choir, so this was very personal.
Yeah.
Like, this is something that makes Eleanor unique, interesting, whatever.
I think it's obvious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mrs. Gibson had fallen ill at this point, so when she was brought into the courtroom on a stretcher to testify, and throughout her testimony, a woman kept yelling "liar" at her. And that woman was Mrs. Gibson's own mother.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So this totally was not received well by the jury.
Yeah, I guess not.
Another witness was also deemed unreliable, as he was a military deserter who had served time in Alcatraz. So he was just discredited as a witness. On December 3rd of 1926, the Stevens were all acquitted, and the Hall Mills murders have never been solved.
Wow.
Probably never will be.
No, all this time, anyone who knew, I mean, there could be some record or journal uncovered. But
So, Dylan, now it's time for the gossip, the hot tea. Who do you think killed the reverend and the choir singer?
well, you read all the stuff about it. I didn't read anything on this one. So, who do you think? Because I have an idea. I mean, I kind of think probably maybe the same thing as you.
And what do we think?
Mrs. Hall.
You think Mrs. Hall?
And her brother, possibly.
You think they're probably responsible for these murders?
I think there's a good chance.
I think there's a good chance, but I also feel like maybe it wasn't Mrs. Hall or Mr. Mills. Maybe it was someone in the church who was angry at this preacher and this woman and decided like their own version of, vigilante justice.
Now, it went on for so long, and it all kind of centered around this church because he was the pastor. She was a member of the church. Her husband was the sexton. He worked there as well. So, I mean, yeah, it very well, and it's someone's religion, which is very, very serious to a lot of people. So it very well could be another church member or someone else in town who just thought it was horribly wrong what they were doing. I would say if it wasn't Mrs. Mills or Mrs. Hall or Jimmy Mills, then it was someone probably from the church to have that kind of anger.
Yeah, I feel like it might have been a suspect that they didn't even look at.
Well, yeah.
Like it could have been a person that they didn't even question.
Well, someone who had this kind of seething anger, and maybe they kept it to themselves, but it just ate them up, and it happened for so long, over years, and kept on. And maybe they heard that he was going to maybe elope or something and felt like they had to do something
Well,
about
there
it.
was a rumor circulating that they were going to elope and move to Japan together.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I know, right? I was like, well, that's pretty specific. Japan. There was also, and like I said, I read a couple of different books, research, and only one of them mentioned that Eleanor Mills had previously had an affair with another man. And they thought perhaps this other man was jealous because she had ended things with him and had started seeing the Reverend.
Oh, yeah.
So that perhaps he was responsible. But again, that was only like one book that mentioned that. The other resources I used didn't mention a previous affair. So I don't want to say I'm not 100% sure it's a fact, but, it was only mentioned by one story and not multiple stories.
Well, I think the evidence shows the state they were found in, that someone came up, at least one person, maybe two, but you could easily do this as one, come upon them in this, isolated place, likely knowing they were going to be there, with a gun, so you could easily control two people with one gun, and killed them both, and then had extra hate and rage towards her, and they took it out on her body after post-mortem.
Well, Mrs. Stevens Hall and her brother Willie do seem like probably the likely candidates because, I think the kind of strength it would take to cut this person's tongue and larynx out, and the extreme nature of she's almost decapitated, that kind of thing.
That's strength.
You would need some strength. So I'm thinking okay, probably not Frances Hall, but Willie, her brother, probably. And he did adore his baby sister.
He would probably do anything for her.
So was probably very angry to find that this woman, had taken her husband, kind of thing. Well,
there's no telling if that is the case, what she said to him to get him worked up, kind of manipulating him towards, he already didn't like Mr. Hall because of the things, the finances, and him kind of ruling the roost when he married in. So, that's a very likely pair right there, but I don't think you could rule out other people having been, someone else.
Well, then on top of it, you have to think about what he said to the maid on Friday morning, before breakfast, that they hadn't slept all night and something just terrible had happened, but he would let Mrs. Hall tell her about it.
Yeah, and Mrs. Hall obviously never followed up with the maid.
No.
But
to say something terrible happened, that seems, and of course he is an excitable man, but that seems like quite an exaggeration that, hey, her husband just didn't come home.
Right.
That doesn't seem like you would describe that as something terrible.
No, and the kind of guy he was, even if he was trying to keep a secret, I could see him saying something like that, letting it slip out, kind of.
Right.
Well, there you go.
Well, we haven't dug back, for an old kind of case in a while, so I just thought that this was a good kind of old story. I like those old true crime stories.
Yes, but it did end up unsolved.
It did.
Oh, I hate that.
You like resolution?
I like resolution.
Okay, well, next weekend I'll have a great solved case for you, Dylan.
But that's okay. That was an interesting story from back in the day that I'd never heard. So, that is very good.
Yeah.
It's very good. And it leaves me wondering. I'm going to be thinking about who did what.
You're just a wanderer?
I'm wondering.
He's just wandering. Just thinking.
Yeah, so here we are, January, heading into February. Yay.
More exciting true crime cases coming up this year.
A whole lot of them.
I've got the next 8 weeks plotted out.
Ooh.
I've been conspiring.
I'm going to dig through your notes and snoop around.
And then we have got an offbeat pop-in on Wednesday. It's a listener story episode. You're going to want to check it out. There's some great listener tales.
Yeah, there's some pretty good stories in that.
And of course, if you have a listener tale, we are always accepting those. You can email us at mountainmurderspodcast@gmail.com. You can find us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram.
Yeah, and I must let people know, Heather is up. Her research for these cases, you may be able to tell by length of stories, depth of the stories, has really increased a lot, and she's working her little tail off. So if you just can't get enough of Mountain Murders and want to support the podcast with a few bucks, check us out on patreon.com and type in Mountain Murders and you can find us. But she works really hard all the time when I'm at work. I'm like, what are you doing? She's like, Mountain Murder stuff, Mountain Murder stuff. Multiple books, consuming all kinds of media. She's putting in hours and hours and hours a week on this.
I know I'm always on my phone, and people probably think I'm just constantly Facebooking, but I'm just reading my Kindle app.
She's researching.
It's true.
So I just want to thank her for these great stories, and we really appreciate you guys listening.
Thank you, Dylan.
You're welcome, baby.
All right. Hope everybody has a great week.